Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of the Trance Takeover here on Sonic Academy. In the last episode, we looked at the atmospheres, and prior to that, it was the acids, just to kind of create that more trancey feel. And in this episode, we're now going to start on all the good stuff, the melodic stuff. So this is where we're really going to start to make the kind of trance vibe and really kind of bring the whole track together. And you're going to start to see how we can layer up the different melodic sounds and use some of the reference tracks that we looked at and kind of start to build it all together properly, make it even more trancey. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at the Plucks. But before we start on that, you might have seen that the project looks a little bit different. I've just gone ahead and added in the chord progression that we are going to be using, and did it for the bass and for the acid, and I've just moved everything over to create this extra 16 bar loop. But let's start at the beginning. So we're going to be looking at these plucks, and I love plucks. It's one of my favourite things to work with in trance, and there's so many different kind of varieties of plucks. You can do so many different things. And you can do arps, you can do stabs, you could make them into main leads, they can be backing, they can be at the forefront. And with this kind of style, I'm going to go ahead and kind of have that classic kind of chicane style plucks that I think everybody kind of identifies with trance. It's one of my favourites. I've used it in so many of my own tracks, and it's just something that to me instantly screams trance. It's not the most complicated of things, but when I was kind of working through this track, when I was coming up with it initially, with all the other elements that you would have heard in the kind of playthrough, it really, really works. It just kind of creates that nice drive. It doesn't have to be too overcomplicated. I think this is where some people go wrong with trance, especially in the intro. They're trying to overcomplicate things. Now, maybe that's fine when it comes to tech trance or kind of psi uplifting, but with more traditional 138 trance, I like to try and keep it a little bit more, not boring, not standard, but just kind of smooth and classy. Nice kind of transitions and lovely sounds all kind of merge together to create that feeling, that vibe. That's what it's really about, isn't it? Trance, it's all about that vibe and that feeling that it makes you emote. So let's go ahead and look at the plucks. We're going to be using Anna, of course, and we're using the Trance Takeover preset pack, of course. And we've got one here, it's called Merlin's Wand. Really nice, kind of standards, kind of trancey pluck, very kind of traditional sounding. And then on the second one, we're going to be layering this up. We've got this Casa Loco. Little bit different. It's got a little bit different, kind of more of a distorted kind of sound. We're going to be using this as a layer. We're going to be using Pluck 1 as the main, Pluck 2 as the layer. Again, this is what hopefully you've been realizing throughout this course. It's all about the sounds you choose from the start. You really need to make sure that the sounds you choose are the best they can be, because then you're going to find it much, much easier to get them into your mix, to EQ them, to make them fit around everything else. So let's go ahead and add the MIDI, and it's going to be very, very simple. So again, we're in the key of C minor, so we're going to be using C and E flat. Then we're going to go down by one semitone and two semitones. Okay. Then we're going to go to the next bar, or the next beat I should say, and then let's bring these back down again. And that is the classic chicane kind of pluck. Super, super simple. Just two notes with some movement in there. And of course, you can kind of go ahead and add in extra notes. You can do whatever you like, really. We can even add some at the start. It's really up to you, but it's this third chord that we're using to create this kind of vibe, and it's really, really nice. So let's just go ahead and copy that to the second pluck. Let's merge them together. Just bring the volumes right, and bring the volume back up. So you can hear there I've got two different sounding plucks. This second one has got a bit more release on it. It's got a little bit more kind of high-end attack, and it's got that distortion. And merged in with this nice kind of glassy pluck, it's really given just a little bit extra to it. And you could add another one, you can keep going and going. But again, it's all about having the, the best sounding plucks possible, the starting sound, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to then kind of EQ and get it into the mix. So speaking of EQ, let's go ahead and look at that. Once again, this is going to be very, very simple. We don't need to do much. We're just going to be doing cuts and boosts, and that's it. So we're going to start with that. Now, this is where it comes a little bit tricky. I find that with some people, they will cut their plucks far too much. So they'll be having their low cut coming right up here. And this is because, and I'm pretty sure I've spoken to other people about this, some kind of intermediate producers, they get stuck with getting the plucks into the mix, to getting them to kind of push through. And they're finding that if they cut more off, that's kind of helping the high ends kind of come through as you're taking off the low. Remember the cause and effects we've been talking about? You're taking off the low, which means that the high end is going to come through more. However, that means now that you've lost a lot of weight to your pluck. Okay, you might have some definition, but you've lost this kind of low mid weight to it. So we want to have, again, that fine balance. Just like we did on the bass line, we want that fine balance between having enough weight and definition without losing or having too much of either of them. So it's almost impossible to see how that will sound right now. We need to obviously start to get it into the mix. But first, let's just do the same with the second pluck. And I'm going to play the first one at the same time. So that's sounding quite nice already. So let's go ahead and put it into the mix. Now, an important thing to remember, what did we do at the very, very start of the track, or the project? We used Voxengo Span, and we used it to make sure that we have, if I just turn the plucks off, that we had our kick and our high around the same area, and we've got now all of this space to fill. We've got a kick and a high at the same volume levels, and now we've got a lot of space in between. We want to see this kind of dip here, and that means that we've got all of this area to put in our mid-range stuff. And so for those intermediate producers who are finding that it's hard for yourselves to get the pluck sitting right in the mix, well, this is going to be one of the main kind of problems, is that you don't have the space in the mix to begin with, or you don't have your kick and your bass and your high end set out properly to allow you to have this space within the mix. So let's go ahead, and I'll just bring the volume down of the plucks, and let's have a look at this. And we want to listen, and we want to bring the plucks up to their at a decent volume, and then we can start adding effects. But you'll see how much they punch through the mix already without even needing to do anything. And it's easy as that. And now we can actually see our plucks are just taking up this nice room in the mid-range. If I turn it off, we can see it pops back down again. Turn it back up. We've got all of this nice space. So this is one of the main reasons why you might not be able to get your plucks into your track properly, is because you're not allowing yourself to have the space due to maybe not having your low and high set up properly to begin with. It's all about your levels. So let's go ahead and start adding some effects to this, because at the moment it's very dry. Let's add some delay to begin with. And of course we're going to use ping pong, and we're going to use the high cut. And let's try this to begin with. We probably don't want too much wet, but we'll dial that back in the mix. That's sounding nice. Let's maybe turn the feedback down a little bit so it stops a little bit quicker. But that's sounding really nice. It's creating that extra rhythm. The notes, or the lack of notes in between the main notes, are now being filled up with the delay itself. Let's add some reverb. We'll use reverb 2. And let's do our low cut. We'll bring the size up a little bit. We'll bring it to, maybe we're looking up here for the decay time, maybe about 3 seconds. And then we'll dial in the wet. So that's starting to sound quite nice. Now you may be thinking, why am I using effects on the actual channel itself? Why aren't I using it in Ascend? Well, I'm much more of a fan of using it on the actual channel itself, because as we can see here, we've got some blood overdrive, and that's the distortion. I like to have my effects on the channel because then I can add stuff afterwards and it's going to affect everything as a whole. If I had, for example, here on our send channels or the auxiliary channels, if I had delay there, then I had the reverb there. If I wanted to affect those both at the same time, I'd either have to recreate the same preset of like the overdrive or, you know, the EQ that I'm doing, I'd have to copy it over, or I'd have to link them to, say, this channel and then link them to this channel again. It's just a bit of a kind of pointless workaround when I could just have them on the actual channel itself. I've got all the controls for the dry and the wet, so it's exactly the same as using it on the send, but I've got now more control in order to be able to put my effects on after the delay and the reverb, meaning that when we use this overdrive, this distortion is going to affect the actual delay and reverb itself. And let's have a listen to how that sounds in the mix. And this is a very cool technique. It's going to instantly bring it out. So we can hear there in the mix, it's really bringing out that high end, that snappiness of the pluck. Let's just listen solo as well. So I'll have it turned off for the time being, and then I'll turn it on. We can really hear how that overdrive, the distortion, is working on the reverb as well. It's bringing out that nice high end of the reverb again. And it's a very easy and quick way to be able to just kind of bring out the sounds that you've got. And then I'm just going to put on an EQ afterwards as well. Let's just brighten this up maybe a tiny bit more. We'll do this in the mix as well. That's sounding really nice, super clean, just really fits in that mid-range so nicely. And you can see we've barely done anything to it, barely any EQ, a little bit of kind of distortion, and that's it. Let's go ahead now and add some pumping to it, some ducking, and let's just start at 0 and dial that in. I just want a little bit of kind of sidechain. That's sounding nice. And remember, that sidechain from the LFO tool, it's working on everything. It's working on the delays and the reverbs as well. So everything is kind of bouncing up and down, but just a little bit. So that's starting to sound really nice. Let's now just do one final step to kind of gel this all together. We're using our friend, the Molotov compressor again. And now we need to think what we're using this compressor for. Well, I want to now compress everything that we've just done and just gel it all together. It's what this is going to do is kind of bring the delay and the reverb up a little bit. It's going to reduce the kind of snappy peaks of the pluck, and it's also going to reduce some of the sidechain. And you might be thinking, well, why am I putting a compressor on after the sidechain when I could just reduce the amount on here? And I've done some tests, and I really do find that putting the putting the compressor on after the sidechain, it does make a difference because it's smoothing things out at the same time. It's not just working on the sidechain; it's obviously working on the whole thing itself, all of the effects, and it's bringing all of it together. And I find it to be a much smoother way to kind of gel things together rather than just kind of reducing the amount of sidechain. And it's a real kind of just a very, very smooth way of doing it. So then let's bring down the release. We want it to kind of bounce up and down, and we'll start with a medium attack. We're using a 4-0 ratio, and then let's just press play, and we'll do this in the mix as well. So that's sounding good. Hopefully you could hear when I turned the bypass on and off there. What that was doing was we could see it. So if I press play and we can watch the dial, when it's doing duh, 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 we've got those accentuated kind of notes, and we could hear that without the compressor on, they were sounding quite snappy and a bit too peaky at that point. What the compressor was doing there was bringing those levels back down again. But then what it's also doing is compressing all of these effects that we've done, smoothing out some of the side chains so it's not kind of too bouncy, and also bringing up some of the delay and the reverb. Let's just have a listen to what it sounds like solo. So I'll play it with the compression and then afterwards without the compression. So hopefully you can hear that. It's really just kind of elevating this sound altogether. It's only a very small amount of compression, but it's really, really helping to kind of bring it all forward. And we heard that in the mix. It's kind of really gelling it into the rest of the track. So now let's go ahead, and I've got everything else set up. So let's just play it and see how it sounds with the rest of the track, especially with the chord progression. So it's starting to come together nicely, and we can really hear now this is definitely trance. We've added these nice kind of chicane plucks, old kind of PVD sound, the James Diamond sound, if you will. I've been using these a lot, and it's sounding really, really cool. So that's it for this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.